Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? It's Thursday, and we're so happy to be here. And welcome to our workshop. It's the roles of state agency in the school construction process and applying for the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program. We're excited to be here today, and we're happy to have our first kickoff collaboration with our partners, and that's with the Department of Education and the Division of State Architect. And we'll go into highlights of the agenda today. So with that, I'll give you an overview of how the agenda is going to flow. We're going to have some brief introductions from our agencies, the Office of Public School Construction, and the California Department of Education and the Division of State Architect. And we'll have a case study from Pixley Union Elementary School District. And we'll conclude with a question and answer session, and then we'll wrap up our program. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I apologize. I'm Lisa Silverman. I'm the Executive Officer for the Office of Public School Construction, and I've been serving in this role for over 12 years. And I'm excited every day to come to work because this is a fabulous job opportunity. And hey, what better opportunity to fund schools? And so with that, I just want to introduce our esteemed director. We're so proud to have her, and she's a wonderful, wonderful leader, and we're so proud of her. So with that, I'm going to give an introduction of our director, Lasso. She was appointed by Governor Newsom to serve as director of the California Department of General Services on March 19, 2021. Previously, Director Lasso served as general manager to the Los Angeles Exposition Park, a position to which she was appointed to by Governor Brown in April 2014. Director Lasso leads the Department of General Services, which serves as a business manager to the state with over 3,500 employees and a budget of over $1 billion. That's quite a budget. So DGS serves by providing a variety of services to the state through state agencies procurement, acquisition solutions, creative real estate management, design, innovation, environmentally friendly transportation, and funding for school construction projects. And that's why we're here. DGS also serves as a control and oversight department to help protect the interests of the state of California. In her previous role, Director Lasso represented the state during real estate negotiations to secure Los Angeles Football Club at the Bank of California Stadium and Lucas Museum of Narrative Art at Exposition Park. She also led through the most triumphant development periods with over $1 billion of construction dollars investment through the Exposition Park, 160 acres. Prior to her appointment, Director Lasso managed the Joint Use Program for the Los Angeles Unified School District. The Joint Use Development Program created community partnerships and capital improvements to projects that were featured and enhancements for public schools that benefit the students and the surrounding communities. In addition to her expertise in real estate development and her strong commitment to public service, Director Lasso has worked on an international level on issues such as economic development, education, city design, and housing. Director Lasso has a master's degree in city planning, urban design certificate from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and a dual bachelor's degree from the University of California, Los Angeles. Her commitment to underserved communities is undeniably has been recognized through awards such as the 2021 Mujer Cambiando el Mundo Award from the Regional Hispanic Institute, the 2020 Bridge to the Future Award from A Place Called Home, and also a City Council's District 9 Shiro Award in 2017, Los Angeles County Medical Association Innovation Award in 2012, and the Building and Constructions 2011 40 Under 40, the MIT Departmental Service Award, the UCLA Charles E. Young Humanitarian Award, and appointment at Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, Hope Leadership Fellow. And Anna resides in Southern California, and she has obviously a great family and husband and spouse and children, and of course, the love of dogs. With that, I will turn it over to Director Lasso.
Good morning, everyone. And Lisa, thank you so much for that very generous and kind introduction. It's a privilege and pleasure to be here with all of you virtually this morning to talk about the role of state agencies in the school construction process, something that is very dear and near to my heart as I spent a lengthy tenure of my early career at LA Unified School District. For all the LAUSD folks in the webinar, knowing it's the second largest district in the nation, and also, at least for California, the cradle of where full day kinder, the resolution was implemented. So a little backstory about me and how school sites are just very, very important to my career development as well as to the work that I do. You all know there's an elementary school, middle school, or high school, a public school in every nook and cranny of California. And that schools not only serve as an educational center for your children, they really are centers of community. And every kid, when they walk in through that door for the first time as kindergartners, they have a great space to call home for that year. Before 2002 or 2003, kinder was really a half day option. And with a lot of folks championing on the policy side, both at local districts and at the state level, we were able to transition to a full day kinder. But facilities then had to be improved. And of course, those facilities, whether it's dedicated space for outdoor play space for kindergarten classrooms or augmenting those spaces with the appropriate program design, calls into question funds, right? Funds and time. And that's where the state comes in to support through the Division of State Architects as school sites modified. And of course, the Office of Public School Construction to support and match local dollars. So the conversation of providing every kid access to full day kindergarten and even transitional kindergarten is very important. Having two children who have gone through full day kinder myself, it was a game changer, not only for me, but for many parents who are working parents, and having that support of your school site is incredibly important. So I'm very proud to be here today leading DGS, but know that I've worn many hats, and on the personal hat, this topic is important. You have great leadership at OPSC with Lisa and Barbara and Michael and everyone on their team. And Ida Clare, who is our state architect, her team is doing fantastic work. They're creating easier access and the accessibility and equity that's needed for all of you to come through and work with the state on your school site plans and help you navigate that process. So you have two incredible leaders who will be there to support. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our incredible Department of Education, and who's here at the table too, and their leadership and commitment to this effort is undeniable. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the superintendent of the Department of Education, and his commitment is, you could just tell by how excited he is to partner with DGS on all the great work that we're doing. So thank you again, Lisa. Thank you, Ida, for inviting me to the webinar, and I will be sticking around to listen to all the great work that's being done. With that, I turn it back to you, Lisa.
Thank you. Wow, it's great to have passion in the program, and I tell you, this group has passion. So with that, let's roll on to the introductions. And again, for the Office of Public School Construction today, you have myself, Lisa Silverman. You have my great colleague, Barbara Kampminer. I tell you, she's an amazing, amazing person, and she is definitely passionate about this program. Happy to have her to co-lead our organization. We also have Joshua Potter, excuse me. He's our program supervisor and manager. And we have Lindsay Gordon today. She does a wonderful job in her presentation. So she'll be navigating you today with the presentation for Full Day Kinder, our new program. And then we also have our esteemed colleagues at the California Department of Education, and my colleague Juan Morales. He's the Director of School Facilities and Transportation Service Division. Yeah, and Juan, I call him my brother because we have a great relationship for many years. So I appreciate that he's still, we're interrelated, interconnected in our mission here. We have John Gordon, who's the Education Administrator and Field Operations at Department of Education. And we have Leslie Taylor, who's the Education Administrator for the Policy Unit there at the Department of Education. And then our sister agency, I'd like to welcome, of course, Ida Claire, the state architect, and she's obviously the first woman to serve in that role. So we're so proud of her to have her here today. And then we also have Doug Humphreys. He's a regional manager at the Los Angeles office for the Division of State Architect. Doug is a definitely great guy and definitely passionate about helping school districts as well. And we have Harlan Raymont, who's a regional manager at Sacramento. And Harlan also is passionate about getting those jobs done. And so we're welcome, Harlan. And then we also have Pixley Unified School District, and then we'll go over a case study today. And Pixley, we have Joel Munoz, who's a Director of Maintenance and Operations, and Jennifer Cavallo, who's the Chief Business Officer there today. So we welcome Pixley, and they'll go over their successful project that we had funded in the last round. To that extent, I want to give you an overview on slide 5 about the Office of Public School Construction. And again, here today, you'll have Barbara Kampminer, Joshua Potter, and Lindsay Gordon, and myself. And on slide 6, we just want to share with you what our role is. As OPSC, the Office of Public School Construction, we are staff to the State Allocation Board, and then on behalf of the Department of General Services, we serve as their staff. We're also headquartered in West Sacramento, and we also have our job and our main role is to assist all school districts throughout the state to help serve in their public education and facilities. And OPSC's core function, we manage a $42 billion school facilities program, and it's predominantly funded through general obligation bond funds. And it's also a matching program, so we can help support local education agencies to fund their program projects. So again, a lot of folks that have been interested for many years in this program. To that extent, we want to provide you some stats of how much funds have gone out in this program. We have funded almost $21 billion in new construction program grants throughout the years. And that's nearly 4,400 projects have been awarded and constructed nearly 58,000 new classrooms. And in our modernization program, again, we've funded nearly $14 billion in program grants and over 7,700 projects and modernized over 144,000 classrooms. We've also had a career tech education program, and we funded $964 million for 859 projects. And the charter school facilities program, over $775 million have been awarded to charter schools and over 82 projects funded. So, and also we've actually have a great opportunity over the last few years, and we're touching on the heart and soul of full day kinder. We've actually had the benefit of awarding $100 million back in May and October of 2019, and that funded 47 projects. So that started off in our venture in the full day kinder. And then we have this new opportunity as we talk about today. We have over $490 million in program grants that we will be awarding soon. To that extent, we were opening up a filing round, and that filing round begins April 1st through April 30th of 2022. And then the subsequent round will open up April 1st through April 30th of 2023. So with that, a lot of excitement here. And just to touch on some of the folks that we have in our management team, it's also good to know who our program managers are. So please don't forget who these folks are, because we want to make sure we provide enough coverage and support in every area of our program. So we have Paula Felsegi. I apologize for butchering your name, Paula, and she's our accounting manager. So yeah, you need to know Paula, because she will help you out if you're stumbling through some process with accounting and getting your money. Paula's a great outreach and resource. Suzanne Reese, who's our operations manager in physical services, and Sue is very helpful in the audit area. So please don't hesitate to call Sue. We have Brian Lepask, and I call Brian the Magic Man, because Brian does an amazing job in the field and, again, in our policies and operation area, and he will provide you the utmost support in getting your program finishes across the line. We have Michael Watanabe, and Michael, he goes silent sometimes, but he's amazing. I can say jack of all trades. He's a chief of program services and admin services. He's a wonderful person to know, and also our chief developer on our online product, OPSC Online. And of course, I mentioned Barbara Camp Minert, and she's a deputy executive officer. So I will pass it over to Mr. Juan Morales, the Director of School Facilities and Transportation Services Division at the Department of Education.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, good morning, everyone. My name again is Juan Morales, Director of the School Facilities and Transportation Services Division at the California Department of Education. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today, along with my colleagues from OPSC, DSA, and the Pixie Union Elementary School District. I think most of you are familiar with CDE. Of course, we are under the leadership of our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Tony Thurman. We have many divisions in CDE specializing in all areas of education, but some of you may not be familiar with my division and our work. So I wanted to start out by giving you an overview of our division. Next slide, please. In our division, we have three main areas, as you can see. The first one is the Office of Learning Environments, and it includes three main teams. The Facilities Planning, Policy, and Standards team, who is led by Leslie Taylor, who is here today with us. They oversee State Board of Education waivers that deal with things like school district organization, school board election requirements. They oversee California's Green Ribbon Schools program. They review Williams facility appeals. They do research on the impacts that school facilities have on pupil achievement. And they're also involved in emergent policy issues, such as the design of gender-neutral restrooms. Next, we have our facilities field operations team, who is led by Mr. John Gordon, and you're going to hear from John a little later today. And they review all of the site and plans consistent with the Title V regulations. I'll be talking more about this team a little later. And then we have our administrative and analytical support team, who perform the initial site plan reviews, and then they coordinate with our field operations team to hand off the projects. We also have our Office of School Transportation, who are charged with developing the curriculum, the training, certification of school bus driver instructors. And then last, but certainly not least, we have our emergency services team, who provide direct support to LEAs in all areas of emergency management, including preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation. And we do this by working side by side with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, along with our colleagues from other state and federal agencies. Next slide, please. So given today's theme and topic, I'm going to focus on our field operations unit. Current statute requires us to develop standards for school site selection and for school design. And we have a specific focus on the educational appropriateness and safety. In response to this charge, we developed the standards that are now part of our Title V regulations. And those are the standards that we use when we review plans and school sites. Every school district must adhere to our standards, but only those that are going to be requesting funding through the school facilities program require our review and our approval. Next slide, please. And lastly, I wanted to share a list of our team. Again, this is our field operations team, along with the map outlining how we divide the state into regions to support LEAs. We have a team of 5 education program consultants that each work with LEAs in the region to help them with their planning and siting needs. The team, again, is led by Mr. John Gordon, who not only manages the team, but he also reviews projects for LA Unified. And I want to end my introduction by really urging you to please contact us early during your planning process. That way we can establish a partnership early, and we can ensure that we provide you meaningful input and not at the end when it could create unnecessary delays. We are here to help, so please involve us early. With that, I'm now going to hand it over to our state architect, Ms. Ida Clare. Ida?
Thank you, Juan. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. DSA is pleased here to present with our sister agency, Office of Public School Construction, and the California Department of Education. I am Ida Clare. I am the state architect, and I'm joined here today with two regional managers, Douglas Humphrey from the regional manager of the Los Angeles office, and Harlan Raymont, the regional manager of the Sacramento office. Next slide, please. DSA is responsible for design and construction oversight on for many projects. We do provide full review for structural safety, fire and life safety, and access compliance to the California Building Code. We cover 1,084 K-12 school districts, which encompass 9,292 campuses, 72 community college districts in the state, which have 114 campuses. We also provide design and construction oversight for essential services buildings, and for state-funded construction, we provide access compliance review. I have been at DSA since 2013. I came to DSA as an access compliance specialist and then moved into the principal architect position overseeing fire and life safety and access compliance regulatory programs. And now I am the state architect, and I've been serving the state architect since 2019. Next slide, please. The two staff that I have with me today, the two managers, Harlan and Doug. Harlan is the regional manager of the Sacramento office, and Doug is the regional manager of the Los Angeles office. We do have two other regional managers, Dessa Rooney in the Oakland office and Craig Rush in the San Diego office. All four of these managers run our operations in the regional offices, the plan review and approval and construction oversight process, and you would engage directly with them for the success of your project. DSA is in 4 regional areas and covers the state, and the color-coded map here that you can find on our website indicates the local regional office to which you submit your plans. Many of you are familiar with DSA, but some of you may not be. And so it's important that we share with you today the plan of approval process and also some information about how we can assist you with your projects, and also some items to look out for when we're designing preschool, TK, and kindergarten facilities. And Harlan and Doug will present later today on those topics. So with that, I will now pass it on back to Office of Public School Construction and Lisa to continue with the program.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ida, for covering your area, and Juan as well. So, and just realize we're collaborative, very collaborative with our local partners, and also collaborative at state agencies. So take this opportunity not only to learn and enrich yourself with this workshop, but also know that we're here to present us any problems. And as Juan mentioned, program and planning is essential. Involve all of our agencies because we want to find solutions early, as opposed to trying to figure out solutions at the end. So again, with that, it's a great pleasure of ours to start off this education forum and workshop. And I will hand it over to Joshua Potter, and the operations manager, and Lindsay Gordon, who's our program analyst, and they'll provide you an overview of the expanded California preschool, transitional kindergarten, and full day kindergarten facilities grant program. So take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Gordon. I'm the project manager for the program, and I'm joined by operations manager Joshua Potter. Today, we'll provide an overview of the program and program eligibility, go through the application process, and discuss funding order determination and requirements for fund release and program reporting. All right, next slide, there we go. So Assembly Bill 1808 established the Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program, or FDK-FGP, and was signed by the governor on June 27th, 2018. AB 1808 initially appropriated $100 million out of the general fund to the state allocation board for this program. The $100 million was allocated during the first 2 rounds in 2019, as Lisa mentioned. Assembly Bill 130, signed by the governor in July of 2021, allocated additional funds and expanded eligibility to include the California preschool and transitional kindergartners. The program provides one-time grants to increase the number of full-day classrooms by either constructing new school facilities or retrofitting existing school facilities. Additionally, funds will be provided to school sites that are adding or expanding a preschool or transitional kindergarten program. The program allows for funding for existing full-day kindergartners and not prospective full-day kindergartners, also known as growth. The application submittal. So the 2022 round will allocate $225 million for approved applications, and all remaining funds will be made available for the round taking place in 2023. All program funds must be encumbered by the SAB by June 30th, 2024. Since the program is using funding rounds, the date the application was received by OPSC will not determine funding order. Applications with district representative signatures and all necessary documents must be received by OPSC by the last day of the funding round. Next slide, please. Funding. So program funding is provided as grants and does require a local district matching share. This is similar to the School Facility Program, or SFP, which provides funding for modernization of existing facilities to extend the useful life of the facilities and enhance the learning environment, as well as new construction funding, which is provided primarily to fund the construction of new classroom facilities to accommodate growing enrollment. Program-based grants are determined based on the eligible project scope and are spelled out in statute. This program uses the most current SFP K6 new construction and modernization pupil grant amounts to calculate the amounts for this program's new construction and retrofit grants, and will be adjusted concurrently with the SFP's construction cost index. For full-day kindergarten applicants, school districts must not have any contracts awarded for full-day kindergarten projects prior to July 1st, of 2018. And for preschool and transitional kindergarten applicants, school districts must not have any contracts awarded for the project prior to July 1st, 2021. Excluding school districts that receive financial hardship funding, program grants will be provided as follows. For projects converting a part-day to full-day kindergarten, preschool, or transitional kindergarten program, a 75-25 state and local share basis for new construction and retrofit grants will be provided. For non-conversion projects, grants will be based on a 50-50 state and local share for new construction projects and a 60-40 basis for retrofit projects. So who can apply? For funding requested for full-day kindergarten or transitional kindergarten, eligible school districts must meet the following criteria. So school districts must hold the title to the real property where the facilities will be located. Therefore, projects located on leased lands are not eligible for funding through this program. Districts can only use program funds to add or expand a transitional kindergarten program or adequately house a full-day kindergarten program. The district must also currently lack the facilities to adequately provide full-day instruction for existing pupils at the project school site. Statute only allows school districts to apply for funding for full-day kindergarten projects at the site, and however, school districts that provide kindergarten instruction may apply on behalf of a charter school that is located in district-owned facilities. So in order to be eligible for the California preschool program, the district must also currently lack the facilities to adequately provide full-day instruction for pupils at the project site. And for preschool specific funding, school districts and county offices of education may apply. And again, a school district must hold the title to the real property where the facilities will be located. Okay, next slide, please. So a district will be considered lacking full-day facilities if the site's current enrollment data exceeds the existing kindergarten compliant classroom capacity prior to the construction of the project. So compliant classrooms refers to classrooms that met Title V requirements at the time of construction. And classrooms constructed as kindergarten classrooms or altered to house kindergarten students, regardless of the current use, will be included when determining existing kindergarten classroom capacity. For example, if a school has 40 kindergarten pupils that are not housed in kindergarten facilities, they are eligible for 2 classrooms, which equates to 50 pupil grants. So in other words, grants are based on increments of 25 pupils. Determining capacity need. So if a site is adding or expanding the program, they may use an average of the current upper grade levels of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade to determine classroom need. To determine enrollment data for preschool and transitional kindergarten projects, OPSC will use higher grade level enrollment from first, second, and third grades on the school site where the project facilities are located. This will be used to estimate prior year enrollment. All current first graders were assumed eligible for transitional kindergarten 2 years prior, second graders 3 years prior, and third graders 4 years prior. With the same relation to preschool kids 1 year before being transitional kindergarten age. Alternatively, school districts can use 3 years of actual transitional kindergarten enrollment in lieu of higher grade levels if available. So an example of a full day project. So before the project, this school site had 2 part-day kindergarten classrooms and 1 part-day transitional kindergarten classroom, with 50 pupils in each classroom, 25 in the morning and 25 in the afternoon. In order to provide full-day instruction for all pupils, the school district would need 3 new classrooms. The need for 3 classrooms translates to being eligible for 75 pupil grants. After the project, the school would end up with 6 total full-day classrooms with 25 pupils in each. Types of grants. The 2 main grants offered in this program are new construction and retrofit grants. New construction grants seek to increase the number of full-day classrooms by the addition of classrooms to an existing school site. Retrofit grants seek to increase the number of full-day classrooms by retrofitting an existing facility that is not a kindergarten classroom. For transitional kindergarten and full-day kindergarten, both types of grants, districts will need to certify if there are any classrooms on the site that met kindergarten Title V design requirements when they were built or were later retrofitted to do so. For preschool, school districts will need to certify if there are any classrooms that met preschool requirements when they were built or if they were later retrofitted to meet that requirement. Part of the verification process will include consulting with the California Department of Education, or CDE, to determine if an application should be limited to a retrofit project. Consultation with CDE will be conducted on a project-by-project basis. OPSC will use enrollment data and site maps to verify a school site's overall need for funding based off the enrollment patterns and the capacity at the site. The program does not allow for construction of new portable classrooms, but it does allow for the retrofitting of those existing portables. For retrofit funding, at least 1 wall must remain standing for that classroom. Continue with types of grants. Districts may apply for funding with or without an advance release of funds. Projects do not need to be plan or construction ready, and districts may apply with requests of advanced funding if the project is merely an idea and moving forward is dependent on state funding. So new construction and retrofit grants requests without an advance release of funds are for districts that have all of the required supporting documentation. For new construction or retrofit grant requests with an advance fund release are for districts that have only a portion of the required supporting documentation. Districts doing new construction projects can request an advance funding for design costs and or site acquisition costs. Advance fund release for design costs will be 40% of the new construction base grant. Districts doing retrofit projects can request an advance release of funding for design costs that will be 25% of the retrofit base grant. Districts do not need to be financial hardship to receive an advance. Base grants for new construction and retrofit projects can be increased by additional grants. For new construction projects, districts may also request additional funding for site acquisition costs. The site must be adjacent to the existing facility, and funding will be provided respective to the land required for the proposed project. Hazardous waste removal, automatic fire detection and alarm system, automatic sprinkler system, site development, which the new construction base grant will be increased by 35%. Districts can also request multi-level classroom construction and project assistance. Project assistance is a grant for school districts that have an enrollment of 2,500 pupils or less. For retrofit projects, districts may also request additional funding for automatic fire detection and alarm system, site development, which will also be increased by 35% of the base grant, and utility costs for the retrofit of 50-year-old buildings that are permanent. The retrofit grant will be increased by 15%. They can also request project assistance. Okay, the application process. What makes a complete application? All school districts requesting program funding must submit all of the following: a complete and valid application for funding, or the Form SAB 7001, a site map, and on that site map, the district must identify and label current use of all facilities at the school site, identify and label all classrooms built or retrofitted as kindergarten or preschool classrooms, regardless of its current use, and identify any program-eligible classrooms that will not provide full-day instruction at the completion of the project. And documentation, verifying district's overall enrollment at the site. CalPED's documentation for current enrollment year of the application when it's submitted, as well as the 3 immediately preceding enrollment years. The district may also submit on OPSC online, and if they do this, the submittal of the 7001 won't be required, but the additional documents will still need to be submitted. So what makes a complete application? All school districts requesting program funding must also submit a narrative. The narrative description of that proposed project must explain the project scope in the project plans. The narrative must also state how many classrooms were kindergarten compliant at the time of construction, explain where kindergartners are currently being housed at the site, and explain the district's planned kindergarten classroom usage at the completion of the project. Districts may still offer part-day kindergarten instruction, but the classrooms used for part-day would need to be identified on the site map and are not eligible for program funding. A clear description of the current kindergarten program must be in the narrative, and specifically if the site is currently offering a full-day program, and if so, when did it begin? If not, it must be offered by the completion of the project. A school board resolution approving the full-day kindergarten instruction is to be provided at the project site and may be provided with the 7001 or may be provided with the 7003, which is the expenditure report and will be discussed later. School districts applying for the transitional kindergarten or preschool program must provide a school board resolution that full-day instruction will be provided at the site with the submittal of the 7001. So all school districts requesting program funding must submit items in the previous slide. And the district or COE must submit its county's most recent child care needs assessment, which is conducted by its regional local planning council for preschool age children, as well as a current or future contract with CDE to operate a preschool program. And please note that school districts applying for program funds for facilities for a California preschool program must build facilities that are not less than 1,350 square feet. So OPSC supporting documentation. Districts applying for a new construction grant without an advance release of funds must submit with their 7001, the DSA application number, DSA final plan approval letter date, the CDE final plan approval letter date, and give access to the plans and specifications. As well, if a district is doing a site acquisition, they must also submit a CDE final site approval letter. Districts applying for a new construction grant with an advance release of funds for design and or site must submit the following with their 7001. They must submit those site acquisition only documents, so the CDE contingent site approval letter and the preliminary appraisal of property that must be dated within 6 months prior to the received date of the Form 7001. And then districts applying for a new construction grant, next slide, please. Thank you. So additional items that are required for retrofit applications. So districts applying for a retrofit grant without an advance release of funds must submit the following with their 7001. These same items that were a part of the new construction application, as well as identifying facilities to be retrofitted in the project and the age of the buildings on the site map. And this is for districts requesting 50-year-old utility grants. And note that the effective date for determining the age of a building is 1 year from the DSA approval date. The financial hardship process. Here's a brief overview of the financial hardship process for the program. The financial hardship process is similar to SFP and utilizes the same documents and forms. District submits the funding application and checks the box for financial hardship request on the Form 7001. OPSC will notify the district when the 7001 is scheduled to be processed. The district will be contacted by the financial hardship team. The district must submit financial hardship documents within 30 days. And because this program moves quickly, the district must submit those financial hardship documents in that 30-day time period. Financial hardship approval and funding application will be processed concurrently. And a reminder, if the district is planning to use bridge financing, please contact OPSC prior to beginning the process or expending any funds. The district does not have to have an approved financial hardship review prior to submitting an application and during that filing round. When an application is received requesting financial hardship, the team will notify the financial hardship team. If you'd like more specific information about financial hardship, we've included an OPSC contact at the end of the presentation that can help with the more detailed questions. So funding order. The preference points will be used to determine the order in which school districts are funded. Preference points will be given to each approved application up to a maximum of 80 points. And that goes as follows. So 40 points will be given if a school district demonstrates it meets the requirements for a financial hardship grant. And up to 40 points will be given based on the district percentage of pupils who are eligible for free and reduced price meals, or the FRPM. The percentage will be based on district data and not site-specific data. You can see the sliding scale listed here. So fund release and reporting. The fund release process. School districts who receive new construction or retrofit grants without an advance release of funds must submit a valid fund release authorization form, the form SAB 7002, with all required approvals within 180 days of apportionment. School districts who receive new construction or retrofit grants with an advance release of funds must then submit a valid 7002 with all required approvals within 12 months of apportionment. You don't need to submit a 7002 for release of advance funds, only for the full fund release. Because the program is funded from money from the general fund, school districts will not have to participate in the priority funding or the PIF process in order to access these program funds. A grant agreement must be submitted prior to the release of any funds. All apportionments will result in cash proceeds being available. Grant agreements must be executed by an authorized district representative. If a valid 702 is not received within 180 days or the 12 months of the apportionment shall be rescinded. The districts may also submit these applications online. So it's a sample program timeline for projects that did not request in advance. First, the school district submits their 7001, OPSC approves the application, and the SAB approves an apportionment. OPSC will create and provide a corresponding grant agreement to be executed and returned concurrently with or prior to submitting a 7002. The school district will then submit a valid 7002, and once those have been submitted and approved by OPSC, all funds will be released to the school district. School districts, again, will have 180 days to complete the entire process from apportionment to full fund release. And this is an example of a program timeline for a project that receives an advance funding. After the funding application is received and approved by OPSC, then the application will go to the SAB to receive an approval for apportionment. If the district is requesting an advance for the design of the project and or site, then they will receive the advance funds after OPSC receives a valid grant agreement. For release of advance funds, a 7002 is not required. Once the school district is ready for the full fund release, they must submit a valid 7002 and grant agreement, and their funds will be released. The district may submit a 7002 in phases for the release of the remaining funds for the site acquisition and then again for the construction, or the site and construction for the remaining full funding may be released concurrently with a single 7002 and a corresponding grant agreement. Districts will have 1 year from SAB apportionment to request the full funding release. Program reporting. A school district that receives program funding must submit a valid expenditure report, or the Form 7003, at the completion of the project. Projects will be deemed complete either when the notice of completion for the project has been filed or 1 year from the date of the final fund release, whichever occurs first. The two 7003 forms will be submitted for a district that has project savings. The first one, the final expenditure report, will be submitted 1 year from project completion or final fund release date. And the second one is the final savings report, which will be submitted 1 year after the submittal of the expenditure report. Projects will be subject to local audit conducted to assure that the expenditures incurred by the school district were made in accordance with the education code and program regulations. 7003s may be submitted on OPSC online. So OPSC and program websites. Here's a link to the program website where you can find application forms, as well as a link to the OPSC online system, which will allow districts to submit applications and forms electronically and upload any required or necessary documents, and as well as track their application process. We also have a link here that is for the PTN generator and tracker. Okay, and program contacts. We have Joshua Potter, myself, and then Jason Hernandez, who is the financial hardship supervisor. Okay, next slide. And thank you. Now we will pass it on to John Gordon from CDE.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Lindsay. I hope everyone's doing well today. My name is John Gordon. You know, before I start my presentation, I want to acknowledge how daunting expanding your early education program must be for many districts, especially in light of a pandemic. You know, these last 2 years have really tested many of you in unimaginable ways as you're navigating through unpredictable and contentious situations while dealing with communities that are often torn in half. Your schools are open, your schools are closed, to mask or not to mask, not to mention all the conversations at the local level regarding vaccinations. And this has pushed many of us in public education on the brink. You know, on behalf of all my colleagues here, I really want to commend you on your dedication, your resiliency, your strength, and your courage in continuing to serve our California students. To talk about this major shift in this webinar today in our public education system and not at least take a moment to acknowledge what many of you and your colleagues are dealing with and experiencing from day to day may come off a little tone deaf. We do see you, and we thank you. You know, depending on your district's commitment, the implementation of the universal preschool TK and full day, you know, could be massive. And in the school facilities world, we may have not seen anything like this since class size reduction, where districts were putting on a lot of classrooms in a really quick fashion. It's probably safe to say that I would say districts are implementing their programs at different paces. And so my presentation today is going to focus on the impacts of this program on your sites and why good planning is necessary. So you really want to start with getting a lay of the land of where your district is in terms of their commitment and expectations with early learning. You know, have there been any timelines set? Is your district currently implementing a full day kindergarten program? And so where is your district at with that rollout? And how does that align with maybe the district's TK implementation? What does your district's preschool plan look like? And does that mean that you'll be adding more or adding preschool classrooms onto your campus? You know, have you created really an overall implementation timeline of how your district will be mapping this out? So there's a lot of questions that hopefully you've got some answers on. And, you know, it's always a good practice to document the district's intentions regarding these early learning programs into your facilities master plan, as it really serves as a roadmap for your district. Other things to consider in terms of getting the lay of the land is really understanding your need. And I know Lindsay mentioned it earlier, that you should be looking at developing some enrollment projections for these early learners and figuring out how many unhoused students you have and how many classrooms you might need. One other thing that you might want to consider is evaluating if you have any existing preschool programs on your elementary school campuses, whether it's Head Start or the California preschool program. Sometimes there is a sense of panic that may come where if you're implementing full day kindergarten, that you may need to add more kinder classrooms and more TK classrooms. And the result may be that you want to push the preschool programs off the campus. And we're really hoping at the Department of Education that you press the pause button, sit and collaborate with these early learning programs, figure out a way how to keep them on campus and integrate them into your larger vision. Next slide, please. So moving on from vision to reality. So it's, you know, you want to have careful consideration in terms of where and how many classes you might need on campus. And I think just plopping down 6 classrooms on every campus and calling it a day probably isn't going to work in this particular situation. We know that our school sites are kind of like our children, right? They're always not the same. So they come in different shapes, different sizes. Your enrollment is going to be different. And your access, which is actually really important for this, as we're talking about this subject matter, may also be different. So there are going to be some cases, as you'll find, that you just don't have room on a particular elementary school to put more classrooms on. It's always a good idea to walk each classroom, each of your campuses, and really talk to your site administrators and evaluate the opportunities and the limitations. Take your district leaders and your school board members with you so that they can see the challenges at the ground level. One thing to really consider is, as you're adding more of these early learning classrooms onto your campus, is that your footprint of the site shrinks. So remember, you still have to have enough hard court and field space to support your PE requirements for the rest of the grades on campus. So if, for instance, you're doing a construction project, maybe you're adding 6 classrooms onto the site, and the project results in the site falling less than 70% based on what CDE would recommend, which is based on your site size and your enrollment, the district would need to submit a physical education plan to demonstrate that there's still enough space to provide PE. And remember, in elementary schools, PE, recesses, lunch periods, they're all competing for the same space. So again, talk to your site administrator because they play a key role as she or he develops a master schedule of how those areas are being used and when they're being used. Other assets to consider, do you have any closed school sites that could be repurposed into early learning spaces? Do you have any unused school sites in which maybe the district acquired but never developed? Those could be an option, but you do need to remember that those sites need to meet Title V regulations. Next slide, please. So we're going to move now from evaluating your sites to really giving consideration of where you want to place these classrooms on a particular site. So you want to be thoughtful of the proximity of where these early learning classrooms are going to be compared to your existing kinder complex. And I'll talk a little bit more later on that. Other considerations is how parents and students are accessing the site from where they're parking their vehicle. And again, I'll talk a little bit later on that. As with all your campuses, you really should be aware of any potential hazards that are around the campus. So for the most part, you're inheriting these schools that have been around for years, if not decades, right? And you always can't rely on what's always been considered, safe. In some situations, you may have a school site where there's a power line, maybe a 70 kV power line across the street, and there's a setback. You want to ensure that you're not placing classrooms within those setbacks, as well as other hazards, whether they're pipelines, railroads. As you're submitting your application for plan approval, you will need to certify to all that. So it's always really good to be keeping accurate and up-to-date records for each of your campuses. Next slide, please. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive as it relates to parent drop-off. Now, we know that parents will likely escort their early learners onto campus. Now, given that, you may need to revisit your existing kinder drop-off as a number of students could potentially double. Now, our Title V regulations do mention that you need to be avoiding pedestrian and vehicle conflicts. So how can you be thoughtful to ensure that parents are able to access the campus without children having to navigate through cars during the peak and drop off and pickup times? And this ties back to my earlier slide about evaluating your sites and your access. You want to be thoughtful about this. So give it some consideration to designating walking paths that are avoiding vehicles. And as you can see on the screen, I did provide an example where one school, when they designed it, provided an entirely separate drop-off parking lot for their kinder students so that they're not dealing with the vehicle drop-off area. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about Title V regulations. The minimum classroom size for kinder is 1350, which includes wet, dry areas, restrooms, storage, and teacher prep. Now, for the sake of clarity, the Department of Education holds transitional kindergarten classrooms to the same standard as kinder, while we have no formal standards in Title V for preschool classrooms. These classrooms, of course, as you know, are intentionally larger than the rest of the grade levels as their curriculum requires more. So as it relates to this particular grant program, the minimum 1350 size classroom does extend out to the preschool classrooms as well. This is actually intentional, as the spaces could be repurposed into TK or kinder as your enrollment fluctuates from year to year. And for those who are familiar with Title V regulations, I understand that there is a provision that you can request an exemption to the classroom size standard. However, it does not apply for this particular program. So 1350 minimum size classroom is the rule, and there are no exceptions. If your district is reconfiguring space, and Lindsay talked about this a little bit earlier, there is some flexibility, as the minimum size would be 1250, as we at the state realize that you can't necessarily increase your footprint. Next slide. A little more on Title V. Title V, as you know, in your existing elementary schools, there is a dedicated play area that you should have that's different than the rest of the general education population. And if you have licensed preschool programs, and that could be your Head Start programs or possibly your California preschool programs, if you're serving children under 4, they probably need their own play area. You want to check with the Department of Social Services community care licensing on their requirements, as they differ from ours. Next slide, please. So let's do a deeper dive here on play areas. As you're planning to construct additional classrooms for your early learners, you really need to evaluate how many dedicated play areas do you need for your kinders or your TKs. Now, what we've noticed with the implementation of the full-day kindergarten program is that many districts were constructing classrooms and sharing the play area from the existing kinder complex. Now, eventually, there might be a tipping point to where that site may need another play area. So talk to your site administrator and your kinder teachers to really understand the scheduling and the use of those areas. A site may also need another play area to ensure that your preschool students have playground apparatuses that are developmentally appropriate. I understand if you have licensed preschool on site, again, they may need their own play area, so you want to contact community care licensing if you're in that situation. If you are going to construct another play area, please ensure that the way that you're designing the buildings and the play area, that the configuration, the rotation is in a way to where from the building you have clear supervision of the play area per Title V regulations. Next slide, please. So at the Department of Education, there is an open invitation, to discuss your sites. We really welcome opportunities to be thought partners as you are navigating through this implementation. And then really this past year, we've had actually quite a few conversations with different districts on what they're going through and what they're considering. I thought I would share some of those things here. One thing that they're thinking about is, do I need to change my attendance boundaries? Going back to what I mentioned earlier, if your leadership has a vision in which they want to have preschool, TK, and kinder on every site, you may need to rethink your attendance boundaries. In some cases, districts are rethinking grade configuration. Some of the conversations we heard is that they're thinking that TK is really a whole separate grade in itself. And whether that's may lead to their elementary schools are now maybe a pre-K 4 and their middle schools are now a 5-8. It really just depends. And coming back to evaluating what your sites can and can't do. The hard reality is for many elementary schools, you're not going to be able to house preschool and TK. So again, taking good consideration and some good planning around how you're going to place these classrooms throughout your district. As I mentioned earlier, consider closed schools could be an option. We talked about one particular district where they have a middle school that's closed and they have a field space that's really adjacent to the front of the school, and they're looking at repurposing that into an early learning complex. So that may be an option for you. And we've also talked to districts about considering purchasing, smaller satellite sites that are near the elementary school where you have access for food services as an option. Again, you probably want to consult with the Office of Public School Construction with Lindsay and Josh and see what the limitations are with that as it relates to this particular program. Next slide, please. As was mentioned earlier, if you are participating in the program or really any state program receiving state funds, you are going to need to get a plan approval from the Department of Education. So I'll just run through this really quick. Essentially, you're going to submit a SFPD 407, which is new construction, or 408, depending on the type of project you have. Perhaps you'll need to submit a plan summary. You will for new construction projects. And then the architectural plan. So we're going to want to see the site, the floor, the interiors, the exteriors. And you can submit those either through CDE Box, which is our online platform for plan review, or if you have them in paper, you can mail them and we'll review them just the same way. We have 3 levels of review at the Department of Education. We have an analyst, a field rep, and myself. The field rep and myself will be signing off on the project, and we are committed to moving projects within 3 months. Next slide, please. I'm going to leave you here with some context. So Brian Boyd in my office will be serving as the lead. He was lead for our full day kindergarten program, and as you will be continuing to be the lead with this program. So his contact information is up there, my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. And if you have non-facilities related, if you have program related questions, my colleague Ben in the early education division will be more than happy to help you. And they have a general email box in which if you have questions regarding to California preschool or universal preschool program, that they would be more than happy to get back to you. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Next, and I'm going to hand this off now to Harlan Raymond with the Division of State Architect. Harlan.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for participating in our workshop today. My name is Harlan Raymond. I am the Principal Architect and Regional Manager of the Sacramento DSA office. Many of you have worked with us before, but for those who haven't, DSA is a regulatory authority over California public K-12 and community college construction. We review construction projects for compliance with structural safety, fire and life safety, and accessibility provisions of the California Building Code. Next slide, please. While we offer this service for all projects, there are some exceptions for work that is exempt and does not require our review. So if you have existing facilities that might need to be refreshed or need some tender loving care before opening them up for pre-K, TK, or all-day kindergartens, the exemptions can be found in DSA publication IRA 22 and are based on construction value of a project as well as project scope. The 2022 valuation threshold is $119,230 for all disciplines and is raised to $268,268 for projects where there is no structural work, the project contains no access compliance work, the project contains no work that triggers path of travel improvements, and the project meets all fire and life safety standards. Even though they are not subject to DSA review and approval, exempt projects must comply with all design, construction, and inspection requirements of the California Building Code. Regardless, the school district is responsible for compliance with all code requirements. Exemptions are only applicable to alterations to DSA certified structures. So in other words, the school district would need to submit any new building or repurposed non-DSA certified building for full review. Next slide, please. IRA 22 outlines many exemptions based on project scope. For instance, maintenance projects are exempt from DSA review. These would include ordinary upkeep and repair, replacement in kind, repainting, replastering, and re-roofing. Keep in mind that a re-roof project is limited to the first recovering of the roof. The new roof material would have to be of the same type as the existing roof, and also substrates would need to be inspected for deterioration prior to applying the new roof covering. Items that would not qualify as maintenance project include work on structural framing or reinforcement, or the replacement of large mechanical, electrical, or plumbing systems. Refer to the appendix at the end of IR 822 for a more comprehensive list of exemptions. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call your local DSA office. DSA also offers an exempt concurrence review where a district can submit a project, and for a nominal fee, DSA will provide a review of the project scope to determine whether or not the project is in fact exempt from full review. At the conclusion of this exempt concurrence review, DSA will issue a letter to the district for their records outlining our determination. DSA also offers pre-application services where the design professionals and district representatives can meet with our plan review staff to discuss their project in more detail. It is suggested that these pre-application meetings be conducted during the schematic phase of a project so that any issues or concerns can be identified early. Pre-application meetings are encouraged for all projects, regardless of the scope or complexity. Topics of discussion usually include overall design of the project, structural requirements, fire and life safety requirements, accessibility and path of travel, and the project schedule. Next slide, please. As you are preparing to submit your project to DSA, you should be aware of our submittal process. Approximately 6 to 8 weeks before the project is ready to submit to DSA for review, your design professional will need to register the project by submitting a DSA-1 registration form and a DSA-1 form which describes the project and the project scope. When your project is registered, DSA will assign an application number and create a box account for the submittal of the project. The design professional will then submit progress drawings to the box account so that we can determine the scope and the complexity of the project and begin to schedule adequate time for our plan review teams. On the intended submittal date, the design professional will submit fees to DSA and the final drawings to the box account. If formatted correctly, the documents will be moved into a Bluebeam session and the plan review will begin. Next slide, please. As I mentioned at the beginning of the submittal process, your project will be assigned an application number and a box account. The DSA box is a cloud-based secure repository for all of your project documents, including drawings, specifications, calculations, and all of the standard forms that are required for a project. The box account is used during all phases of the project, from design development, when progress drawings are first submitted to DSA prior to review, through construction and project certification. DSA box can be accessed by the various design professionals, district personnel, contractors, and project inspectors by both mobile and desktop applications on a 24/7 basis. Next slide, please. As a response to COVID-19, all DSA services, with the exception of field visits, are being conducted electronically. This includes plan review and back check, over-the-counter reviews for smaller PC-based projects, and the review of all construction change documents. DSA has found great success in performing electronic plan review utilizing both the DSA box and Bluebeam, which is our PDF reader and editor program. We have been able to maintain a high level of efficiency and with the electronic plan review throughout the pandemic with very little disruption to our communications and workflow. And with that, I will turn it over to Doug Humphrey from our Los Angeles office. Again, thank you for participating in today's program.
Hello, everyone. We're running a little behind, so I'm going to kind of whip through this a little quicker here so we can get on to the try and keep to our schedule here. Considerations for submitting to DSA. They're fairly simple. These projects will be processed through DSA, very similar to any other project that DSA reviews. If you're familiar with the DSA processes, I don't think you'll find a whole lot of difference in how we process things. Since these are a new scope of work, basically for DSA and many of you, it's highly recommended that we have a pre-application meeting. Harlan mentioned these. I've heard it mentioned it before in here. These are fairly easy to set up. If you go to our website, there is a section that talks about forms in the toolbar at the top. If you click on forms, each regional area has a pre-application form. Oakland is DSA 91, Sacramento is DSA 92, Los Angeles is DSA 93, and San Diego is DSA 94. These are a pre-application form that you fill out online, hit the send button, and it will go to the project services supervisor in each of those regional offices, and they will set up the pre-application meeting. I think this is an important step to kind of get all of us on the same page as we start into this scope of projects. So the pre-application meeting, I think, is highly important. When it comes time to actually submitting the project, again, these projects are not unsimilar to other DSA submitted projects, so be sure and submit the DSA 3. The DSA 3 is a submittal checklist. It's about 8 pages long and it covers every contingency. Your project may not have everything required that's on that list. Just check the items that you feel are within the scope of your project and be sure and submit that with your project. One of the important things, if you're not building new facilities, but you're utilizing existing buildings, DSA requires certification of the projects previous to this. And so if you have a building, you need to verify whether it is a certified clear through to the current time and make sure that we get that certification. You're not required to have that certification at the time you submit, but certification of the underlying structure will be required prior to DSA stamping this project out and allowing it to go to construction. Get an accurate cost estimate. Your fees to DSA are based on that. And even though we can charge you later, nobody wants a surprise at the end of the project. So be sure to have a good, accurate cost estimate and the fees that are appropriate for that cost. Evaluating the existing building seismic compliance. Again, DSA is looking at the existing building. There's a DSA IR EB4 that talks about the requirement of seismic retrofit to buildings where your alteration cost exceeds 50% of the replacement cost. And you could find quite a surprise in that you have to seismically retrofit these facilities. You plan on doing some minor alterations, you feel, but the cost of a small classroom isn't very high and your alteration costs can exceed that 50% line and require a seismic retrofit. Analysis of existing site facilities and accessibility. You have to be able to get to this facility, so it's not just the accessibility requirements on the specific space, but on your site. So have an analysis done to make sure you have the accurate parking, signage, path of travel, drinking fountains, restrooms, everything required to serve this facility. Accessibility cost threshold, be sure to keep that in mind. The architect of your project needs to verify that. If your project doesn't have accessibility costs that hit this threshold, you may have to do some other accessibility items on your campus. Most of these projects will have enough accessibility alteration to cover that cost threshold. CGS, Geotechnical Hazard Review. That's a review that's required by another agency, CGS, California Geological Survey. This is for if you're building a new facility on your campus, you have to have a geological review, geological hazards review, and that's submitted to CGS separately. They have their own fees, their own submittal procedure, and I would contact them through their website. They have a significant backlog right now. If you intend to build new facilities, I would contact them as soon as possible to get in line, get your geological study done and submit it to them as soon as possible. FLS requirements for fire flow hydrants and fire department access. These are standard and will be required with a project of this type. Again, you might take an analysis of your existing facilities and make a determination what you will need in this category. Site modifications for drop-offs and parking may be required. Again, I think it's been mentioned the importance of having these facilities near the actual classrooms. Title 24 energy requirements, these will be just the same as would be required for any other project. And inclusion of minimum sustainability items. The minimum sustainability items include the Title 24 energy calculations. They also require MELO documentation. MELO is the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance. DSA has been requiring this for quite a few years now. Landscape plans with tree shade ratio calculations. This is a fairly new requirement. We don't go into a detailed review. We just want to see that that tree shade ratio has been calculated and is part of your landscape plan. List of required third-party acceptance testing. Again, this is something that happens at the end of the project. It has to do with your HVA systems and how they work and that they are in compliance with the code requirements. EV charging station infrastructure readiness. A new project like this may require it if you're doing alterations to the parking lot. Take a look at that. If you have any questions, that's again a good reason to have the pre-application meeting. Very important to have this. Can I have the next slide, please? So we've kind of gone over some of these. The drop-off areas, again, I think it's been mentioned before, the importance of that location in juxtaposition with your new facilities. Route of travel, walks, width, and side slopes. These are items that will be reviewed just as any other project. Ramps, slopes, handrails, main entrances need to be looked at, especially at the admin building. Most schools have some kind of security program where the guests need to come to the administration building instead of directly to this facility. That may be dependent on the operation of your school. Handrail heights, cross sections, cabinets, toilets, changing tables, all these items on this list are part of the ADA access compliance concerns. The same that if you've submitted other projects, you're used to DSA looking at these. The very last one, CBC, California Building Code provisions for suggested children's mounting dimensions for plumbing fixtures, toilet accessories, and general reach ranges. Could I have the next slide, please? This is out of the California Code of Regulations, Title 5 under CDE, Facility Design Guidelines for Kinder Classrooms, would suggest considering the following. Kindergarten classrooms, won't go into that. That 350 has been well discussed. Classrooms should be designed to allow supervision of the classroom and all play areas utilized by the same classroom group. That the play yard design provides a variety of activities for the development of large motor skills. Classrooms are located close to parent drop-off and bus loading areas. Storage, casework, and learning stations are functionally designed for use in free play and structured activities, and as much shelves are clear and open for frequent use of manipulative materials. Windows, marking boards, sinks, drinking fountains, and furniture are appropriate heights for the user age group. Restrooms are self-contained within the classroom and within the kinder complex for exclusive use by this same group. Again, I want to emphasize coming to DSA, let us work with you on these. DSA has a tremendous amount of experience in the kindergarten classrooms. I think this is an easy transition for DSA. The review will be the same, and we would like to participate with you. Subscribe to our listserv. This is how DSA communicates with our stakeholders. The more people we have on the list, when we have to send out information, either regarding a code change, a new program, change in one of our IRs, however we need to communicate with the design community and school districts, the list is our route of communication with you. So please go to our website and look into getting on our list for serving. And I think that's the last slide I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Harlan, for your presentation, and John as well. So here we are. We're going to introduce Pixley Unified Elementary School District, and they're going to present their case study because they were actually funded in the last filing round. And again, to that extent, I will introduce Joe Munoz, who's the Director of Director of Maintenance and Operations, and Jennifer Carvalho, which is a Chief Business Officer there at Pixley Unified Union Elementary School District. So welcome and take it away.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. A little backstory on Joelle and I and the school district. We both attended Pixley School as children, and our children actually attended the school also. So we really talk about passion. We have a great passion for this district, the staff, and the community. Next slide, please. There are going to be a couple of slides on our finished product. This is the front view of our kinder wing. Next slide. This is the side view with a lot of flat work for our tricycles. The kids love to ride those tricycles up and down and develop those motor skills. Next slide. The next two slides are of the interior of the classroom. It is a panoramic view, so it does look a little bunchy. It really is not. It's long and spread out. Next slide. This is our floor plan of our schematics. If you notice, we've put in extra restrooms. It's kind of hard to see on this slide, but we thought that was very, very important for the kinders. Next slide. We are located in Tulare County, very small rural community, about 3,000 people, very rich in agriculture. Next slide. There's the map with the pin. We house two different sites, Pixley Elementary School, TK through 5, and Pixley Middle School just adjacent across the street. We do have a very high unduplicated pupil percentage at 96%, as well as free and reduced lunch rate. Next slide. And Joelle will take it from here.
Good morning. I think it is. I'm excited to be here with you to share some of the steps and obstacles we faced with this project. We had to start somewhere. We all have to start somewhere. And the first steps are to get the information. Just a little encouragement. I know that we all get busy. We all have fires to put out. But if you don't set yourself up to get away and attend meetings and workshops like this one, you could be losing out on potential opportunities. In a small district like ours, we wear multiple hats. Our district doesn't have a facilities director, but these agencies make it possible for even little guys like us to manage. Sometimes funding is out there and all you have to do is ask a question. In our case, it literally was a 60-minute local office of education meeting, and it was a difference of $2.5 million in our new building. So that's kind of how it worked out for us. There's definitely other value in attending things like this, other than potential funding opportunities. The contacts and networking opportunities created at these functions can be hard to put a dollar value on. Just an example, our district secured $500,000 in facilities hardship. And this was just a brief conversation that we had with a peer. It had nothing to do with hardships. It was just a conversation that triggered an idea and it snowballed from there. So definitely encourage you to be here, and being here today is a good start. In the slide, we included some resources, which most of you are probably familiar with, but also encourage you to reach out to local offices of education because oftentimes they have workshops for state facility programs. In Tulare County, we created a small network for facilities and maintenance that we use to share and ask questions, which oftentimes are pretty specific to our rural area, which is farm country. So definitely reach out. Thank you. The way we like to start most projects is with a needs assessment. Before we spend any significant amount of time, we evaluated our enrollment versus capacity. We asked ourselves, do we have enough of the correct types of classrooms for the target grade level? Just a small suggestion, as it was kind of repeated over and over again, so I don't want to get too much into it, but get familiar with the Title V Kinder construction standards. The CDE ones are pretty general, and they do help make that determination pretty easy. They're helpful during the needs assessment. Determine what environment will fit with your educational program. This isn't really my strong suit, so clear communication with site leads and the powers that be on that side of the spectrum was critical. Can your site district support or facilitate a full day program if you don't already have one? The assessment and evaluation of your sites to the state standards can help determine if your best method to proceed is to modernize an existing facility or to bring in a new structure. Once the assessment is complete, the eligibility can be easily determined, and it kind of fell into place for us by following those steps. Next slide, please. Stakeholder input is important for us. We live in a small community, and getting support early without getting hopes up too high is important. Once we knew we qualified, we held public discussion to make sure that all stakeholders were on board with our recommendations to bring on additional buildings. Once we did the assessment, of course, we want to get feedback from school board because adding buildings had operational and fiscal impacts. Every square foot addition comes with an ongoing expense once you occupy, so we found it important to bring that to light up front. Getting department feedback was important as well. Will the additional students, if any, fit into our current lunch schedules and require significant changes to our transportation department, for busing, transportation. During some of these conversations, we were able to see if anyone had specific priorities, especially if your enrollment is going to increase significantly. Sometimes our school board has preferences, and getting those up front can make for a more welcomed and supported project. Next slide, please. The application process, I really won't get too much into that, the details of that, but I just would like to share my experience going through the process. Working with the state agencies, I was apprehensive at first. The initial calls were very welcoming and extremely informative. OPSC was my first call, and they were amazing. They were unbelievably helpful. I felt like they were doing everything they could to give us money. We had the opportunity to get to know some of the staff from the different state agencies, and we even met some of them at regional workshops. All were very courteous and helpful. I just can't say enough positive things about them because it was truly a pleasure to work with them. The state agencies have information about your sites, but they don't know them like you do. So be transparent, descriptive, and detailed about your needs, and they all just want to help. So that was our experience, and we were grateful for it. Next slide, please. The application approval, After approval, we locked in our architect. Everyone in the Central Valley is busy these days. I'm sure it's probably the same across the state. Everybody's just working hard on projects. Having an architect pool can be helpful. We work with a couple of amazing firms, DKJ Architect and Teeter Architect. They both know our sites and preferences, so this helped cut down on some of the design meetings. It seemed like the process went really fast from application submission to breaking ground, so securing an inspector early, it would have been nice for us. We didn't quite get there on that one. It just went too fast. So we did struggle with this part because they were all pretty much locked in on other projects. We actually had to go out of our area for this part. So I would recommend locking in an IOR once you and your architect establish a general timeline. And for us, it worked out in the first couple of meetings. Of course, most of you facilities directors have this part locked in. Just another suggestion, if you can, hire an inspector early enough, just prior to final DSA submission or prior to bidding to help conduct the plan audit. Excuse me. Not to say that architects make mistakes, just for those of you that might be in the room, but a fresh set of eyes can limit change orders and maximize dollars. One thing we were able to do on this project was secure our inspector and our labs under do not exceed contract. This made the budgeting a little bit easier. Sometimes there's a concern that when you lock them in under do not exceed, people would just bill to that number. But in our case, both cases, we were able to recoup a large chunk of that money for additional work. And it kind of served as a contingency for us. I like doing this because it limits soft cost variable that can oftentimes run away from you if you're not watching it. Of course, this does require oversight. Our project was pretty cut and dry, so for them, putting a price on it was relatively easy. Also, for any smaller districts that may not have the ability to manage the project internally, there can be value in bringing in a project manager, but again, you may consider locking them in early. Fortunately for us, we didn't have to. We were able to keep that money and the hard costs, and but we have used them before, so there's nothing wrong with that. It just kind of depends on the project size and internal staffing. Next slide, please. Pre-construction. I like doing things by committee when we can. As we began to solicit candidates to sit on our committee, we wanted to make sure that we were careful with our selection process. We needed people that would respond to emails promptly and were flexible to meet on a consistent basis. So we kind of set those expectations up front. Zoom was helpful with this process. Sometimes people can't get to a meeting location, but they can log in. We wanted a committee that was appropriate to the project. We invited a kindergarten teacher, site principal, a board member. We actually got two. Obviously, Jennifer was there, our CBO, and our superintendent if time allowed. The committee size had to be manageable. They also had to help get information out and obtain feedback from other interested parties or stakeholders. Some of the things that we discussed in our committee, for example, were location of the structure, since we decided to bring in a new one. We considered ease of access for pickup and drop off, existing playground equipment, existing drinking fountains, exterior restrooms during playtime, because the building placement, it was definitely going to impact the cost. It was our intent to dual purpose as much as reasonably possible. And usually architects are pretty good about this part. I brought in my maintenance, grounds, and custodial crew. I wanted to make sure that I didn't overlook anything. So I asked them if the design and placement would allow them to do their work efficiently, where their equipment fit in with little concern or no concern. I also wanted our maintenance guys to have input with hardware, mechanical, because they know best about what works and what has high failure rates, and we don't want that stuff in there. That turns into a maintenance issue. One of the larger priorities was exterior restrooms to eliminate the need for students. As Jennifer mentioned in our floor plan, we did add those extra restrooms that are accessible from the outside. This was a supervisory issue that we were dealing with, and it was brought up by one of our aides, I believe, which required a separate staff member to remain inside the classrooms to monitor restroom usages during recess time. We felt pretty good about our committee because I think we were able to check most, if not all, the boxes. Next slide, please. Jennifer? I think this is you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes, thank you, Joelle. So for record keeping, these were a couple of considerations and tips that we have learned over the past few projects. One is to create a shared drive, share it with your main administration, and scan everything into it. Every document, even if you think you may not need it, just scan everything into it and try to organize it as best possible in folders, makes for ease of access. Another thing is standard processes for invoicing. Some companies prefer email these days, some prefer snail mail. Just make sure that you outline who the invoice needs to go to as far as email, the address, if they're using snail mail. Some of these things can get very contentious if you don't look at those ahead of time, because people, especially with ours, we have different site addresses. And email, we constantly are looking through and searching email, or at least I am. If you keep everything very streamlined, the subject line contains the project name and number, it's very easy to go back and search for all of those email threads that you may need to refer back to later. And one of the last things is a monthly project review meeting to get together the director of maintenance and operation, the CBO, the accounts payable, make sure everybody's on the same page as far as invoicing goes and where we're at with the project. Using a Google Sheet, an itemized one, for us is better because our current financial system is very vague. So you can't see multiple invoices, etc. So we found that that would be extremely helpful. Joelle?
So for construction, without breaking down the construction process too much, because I'm certain there are way bigger experts in this room than me, just keep in mind that most of these projects do require district oversight, a significant amount of district oversight. Whether you bring on more help via a project manager or decide to manage this internally, it will require extra hours, especially if you're a little district like ours. You might just remember to have extra patience with your maintenance directors. Definitely want to throw that in there. We do get busy with our routine jobs. And then also if we're managing projects like this, it will consume our days. If they do seem overwhelmed, it's probably because they're doing a good job watching over your investment. So encouragement and support definitely goes a long ways. Things that helped us along the way were establishing clear ground rules for the contractors and consultants. We have some bullet points here for the ground rules. So it's fence perimeters, student safety is a priority. And then obviously the newer one that we're all dealing with is pandemic. So construction during pandemic, sharing, being very, very transparent with your guidelines on how you're operating your schools, because, anxieties do get elevated. And when somebody's walking around without a mask and they should be according to your guidelines, there could be some very vague or gray areas there. So making sure that that's clear and upfront, is critical. And definitely appropriate language and appropriate attire definitely goes a long way. The other thing is I like to get the general contractor and the inspector to help enforce. So we set that expectation up front. So I can't be on the project all the time, and they can help enforce that and make sure that that stays consistent. Next slide, please. This is just a general snapshot of the timeline. There was definitely some overlapping on there. There might be some tweaks that we needed to do to this one, but really from submission to funding, I mean, it just seemed like it went super fast. So just being ready. It was definitely one of the faster projects that I've done. Next slide, please. And then just to conclude, some key takeaways. Again, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't hesitate to call the agencies. They're all super helpful. It will consume and require a lot of extra work and extra hours. And then really remember why we do this and why we're here. Remember why we work so hard. The kids usually don't get the option or much of a choice of which schools they attend or even the conditions of their facilities. We need to be accountable for those conditions and be responsible to ensure that our kids' experience at school is as fun and welcoming as possible. So to conclude, just keep them in mind as you go through every step, even when the times get really rough and hard. And really, finally, we just want to thank the state agencies for inviting us to share today. And I think now we head back to Juan Morales.
Thanks again to our partners from Pixley Union Elementary. I think we're going to open it up for some questions. We're going to have Ms. Kampminer help us facilitate some of the FAQ section. Barbara?
Yeah, so we did get quite a few questions through the Q&A and chat features during the presentation. What we've tried to do is batch the ones that have some common themes. So we will address those. And then also we do plan on having an FAQ document posted on the website later on. So if we don't get to a specific question, we will include it on the FAQ document. And then once we run through those, please feel free to use the raise hand feature if you have some additional ones that you'd like to do verbally. But I did want to start as the first one, and I'll largely be directing these to different agencies to address. But as the first one, we did see a couple of questions in the chat and separately on whether or not it's worth it to apply, because some folks are concerned that they won't meet the preference points in order to be considered. We don't know how things are going to come out. So I would say it was very competitive for the first 100 million, but that was limited to the full day kindergarten. So now this is been opened up to preschool and transitional kindergarten. And however, the funding has been increased. So we're not quite sure what we're going to get yet since this is so new. We do expect a lot of interest. That being said, we got a little bit further down the list than I would have expected when we did the first $100 million round for full day kindergarten. So I would encourage all districts to at least take a look at it. The nice thing about this particular program is that the application is pretty streamlined, so you don't have to have construction plans ready to submit an application. You don't need approvals necessarily, you need an idea. So it might be worth taking a look at the application with the idea and seeing if it's worth some time to put together the concept and just seeing what happens. And we do have the 2 rounds of funding. So if you're not quite ready to do that in the first round, you can apply for the second round as well. So I did want to encourage you that we don't know what's going to happen yet. So don't count yourself out until you have an opportunity to evaluate and see what you can do there. Next, I'm going to transition into whether or not the program covers funding specifically for playgrounds and specifically for restrooms. And both of those types of work can be included as eligible expenditures on the project, but it is not a standalone program for just those purposes. You do need to include a classroom in the application, and then you can add on the playground or the restroom work as well. So as long as the application has a classroom, then the other things can be considered. And that leads us to a nice transition to a question over to CDE. We did get some questions in the chat about where to find the standards for transitional kindergarten and preschool classrooms. And then also if you had any thoughts on some of the requirements that districts should be thinking about for playgrounds in particular. So John, I'm going to pass that question to you.
So the first question again was the standard, classroom size standard?
The standards. So where folks should be looking for the Title V standards, for example, or preschool.
Classroom sizes or, I'm sorry.
The question in the chat was just general to what's included in the standards for these classrooms. So,
1350 for kinder TK, and we're also throwing preschool into that. So that would include wet, dry areas, storage, teacher prep, restrooms. We do have, and I did on the slide deck, there was a link as it relates to what we would recommend for play area sizes. So you can check that out. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but like I said in the presentation, many districts are accessing the existing play area. It's a matter of when is that tipping point where you're going to need a new one. And some of the conversations we've had with districts is kind of all over the place, whether students are out there 1 hour a day for each class. In some cases, the play area is large enough to accommodate 2 classes. Sometimes it's just 1. So really, there's a lot of the nuances as it relates to play areas.
Also, really quickly, Barbara, Leslie just put in the link to our Title V regulations on our website for folks to reference. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, John. We also, so a lot of these questions are for OPSC. I'm going to batch those at the end. The question came through for Pixley. Thank you so much for sharing your case study with us, but we did have some districts interested in learning more about your Google tracking sheet. So they were wondering if a sample template could be made available.
Sure, we could do that. It's similar to completing the SAB 5006 expenditure, really replicating that, and I just add more detail into it.
Great, thank you. Okay, transitioning over to our OPSC folks. First question that came through, if we could reiterate who can apply for the program, and also if we could, as a follow-up to that, what constitutes full day for these programs?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. And thank you again, everyone, for attending and all the questions. This is great to see so much participation and active participation at that. To answer the question on who can apply for the program, the governing statute, so Education Code Section 17375, actually identifies that for the kindergarten aspect of the program, so full day kindergarten and transitional kindergarten, school districts may apply. When you add in the composite for the preschool, the statute identifies that school districts and county offices of education can apply. The premise to that for the application eligibility, it does also identify in statute that the project must be on district-owned site and must be in district-owned facilities, and the program must be operated by the school district. Now, going into the question on what defines a full-day program, in the statute, and then also when you read through the corresponding statutes that are referenced, full-day kindergarten is actually referenced for Education Code Section 8973, which indicates that the program must be it must exceed 4 hours exclusive of recess. The statute then corresponds to go into Education Code Section 48000D, which defines transitional kindergarten as being the first year of a 2-year kindergarten program, and thus we identify that must also be a full-day transitional kindergarten. In Education Code Section 17375, in the definitions, specifically in M, it defines that the preschool program must also meet a full-day California State preschool program. When going through the reference statute, that also aligns with starting with Education Code Section 8207 and goes into 8245, which outlines a minimum of 4 hours for the program services.
Thank you, Josh. Next couple of questions related to portables versus modulars, if we could address that, please.
Yes, definitely. In the Education Code specifically for the program, again in 17375, particularly in F3, the statute does identify that new construction funds may not be used for the purposes or intent to install and purchase those portable buildings. There was some questions on the definition of that. It is thoroughly defined in the statute again, which in some of the summaries of that, and we will post the full reference in the chat, is regarding the ability to transport across the highways or freeways, and also the less than 2,000 square feet. Modular constructions are allowed in the program. It is different than portable constructions, and under a retrofit, it does still allow for you to do a retrofit of an existing portable.
Thank you for that. I'm going to batch this one a little bit. So we do have the slides available, and we do have the video available for this presentation. So we got a number of questions on that throughout the presentation. We will have those posted. And if you do go through the Q&A section of this meeting, you will find those links in there as well. So for those of you that didn't get an opportunity to download the slides or want the links so you can watch this later or share it with others, you can go ahead and check there, and then it will be posted on the website. Also did want to address, we got a couple questions about where to find the funding application or the RFP. So this is a little bit different than an RFP. So this is going to be an application process. And so you will go to the OPSC website to obtain the application material. And we are, that was just approved by the State Allocation Board at the January meeting. So it's only been a couple days since that's happened. So we, what we've done is we've posted the board item. So what we took to the State Allocation Board that includes what changes are going to be made to the funding application, to the regulations as well. And then we do hope to have that as an electronic application. So that's going to be on the website also. And then next question, Josh, can you please clarify the project timelines? We got a question on the 1 year and what needs to be done in that time period.
Yes, Lindsay, in her portion of the presentation, again, all of this stuff would be available to review at any time at your leisure, the actual handouts, the PowerPoints, and then also the recorded video. So when it comes to the program application and timelines, it's dependent on whether or not the district is, as Barbara mentioned, you can apply with merely an idea. In that case, you'd be applying for a design advance for the funding, and that will get your project started. In that circumstance, from the time of which an application is received, processed, and goes to the State Allocation Board for approval, if it is under an advance for design criteria, the district would have up to 1 year from the State Allocation Board approval to obtain all of the necessary approvals and submit for the fund release. So that is the first year. Following that, upon the release of the funds, the district would then have 1 year again to complete the project. So in essence, if it's an advanced project, you would essentially have 2 years to complete it, from the merely a conceptual design and discussion to the project completion. So again, 1 year from apportionment to obtain the approvals and submit for the full fund release, and then 1 year after the fund release to complete the project. If it is a project that is coming in that already has plan approvals, and is already ready to go under the construction. It is a different timeline on that, as you would only have then the 90 days to submit that fund release, or excuse me, 6 months to submit that fund release, and then 1 year again to complete. So again, timeline varies based on whether the application has or does not have the approvals, but it does have a 2 year if you're coming in for that advance, which I know the question was specifically around.
Thank you. And we're going to do about 2 more minutes of questions here. So I'm going to try to hit the ones that access the most answers here. We have some, well, actually, let me say this. So we have some specific questions related to individual projects, sites, or circumstances. We would encourage you to submit those questions. Most of them look related to the funding application. So we'd encourage you to submit those questions to Lindsay and Josh so we could look at your individual circumstances to see if the project concept is eligible for the program. And then, Josh, if you could address the contract dates. There was a question about that. And then I did see a hand go up. So while Josh is answering that, I'm going to go see if I can find that hand for the next question. Thank you.
Yes, for the contract dates, as this new expanded program is built upon the initial full-day kindergarten program, applications with contract dates that were signed after the original full-day kindergarten statute, which would be signed July 1st of 2018 or after, would still be eligible to apply. For the transitional kindergarten and preschool, since those were included with this current statute, those contracts would have to be signed on or after July 1st of 2021.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. Okay, so I don't see that hand up. So if we did not get to your question, we will be doing an FAQ document. So thank you so much for submitting all these questions. We're going to capture those and make sure that we can get some answers to those. I did see a couple questions related to DSA procedures specifically, but not maybe not for this particular program. So those would be great questions for the DSA contacts. Reach out to your respective regional managers, or Doug or Harlan would be happy to assist you with those as well. I think a couple of these are anonymous attendees, so we might need you to submit that question so that we can address it. And then we do have, oh, it looks like we do have that hand back up. Liz, can you help me with the name on that? Because, oh, here we go. Let's see here. Oops, we've got 2 up. Donata, let's see here. Let me ask you to unmute. Oops, is that working? Can you?
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. Yep, now we can hear you. Thank you.
I put this in the chat as well. Is there a list available of which districts were awarded the grants in the first round?
So we do have our report up for both the filing rounds that we had for the $100 million, and it is on the full day kindergarten, the new state California preschool, transitional kindergarten, and full day kindergarten program website. So if you go to the report, which is I believe down towards the bottom right hand of the page, that lists the outcomes, who applied, district demographics, who applied in both rounds, and who received the funding. So that's probably the best resource, particularly for those who are looking not just at who the districts were, but the characteristics of the district as well.
Thank you.
Josh, any other resources there, Josh, that I should be mentioning?
That's probably the best resource I can think of. We do submit a annual report also to the legislature. So there's our different publications. You may see those in, but definitely that resource link that Barbara provided is the most inclusive, and it gives you both rounds separately, so you can kind of look at each one of those individuals.
And I think Michael just gave us the page in the chat there. So thank you very much. I know we still have questions, and I really appreciate all the questions, but we are at time. So I'm going to turn this over to Juan Morales to go ahead and close this out. And again, we will follow up on the questions that we didn't have an opportunity to get to today. So thank you all very much. And Juan, passing it over to you.
Thanks, Barbara. We do realize that we provided a lot of information today. So again, just like Barbara mentioned, we will be posting the presentation along with closed captioning on our website. In fact, we did provide a link in the chat And we're also going to be posting a list of FAQs since we did receive a lot of great questions. I think at one point we peaked at over 500 participants for this webinar, so we had a great turnout. On behalf of Lisa Silverman, Ida Claire, and myself, Juan Morales, many thanks to all of you for participating, and special thanks to our panelists from OPSC, DSA, and the Pixley Union Elementary. We do plan on continuing this joint state agency partnership, and we will be offering additional future webinars on other topics, so please stay tuned. Thank you, and that concludes our webinar.